A new book tells the surprising story of how a pair of baby gorillas changed the course of history at the National Zoo.
And D.C. finally meets its water with the long-awaited grand opening of the Wharf.
All of that, plus the top stories from the News Rundown, are straight ahead on this edition of We Are Washington.
Welcome to We Are Washington. D.C. is now a waterfront city. The Wharf is officially open, and the mile-long stretch in Southwest is breathing new life along the Potomac. The $2.5 billion project includes lots of restaurants and retail, a boardwalk, and a dazzling new music venue called The Anthem. Coming up, we'll take you to where D.C. meets its water.
And another favorite destination, our National Zoo, is featured in a new book by a local writer. Raising America's Zoo tells the inspiring story of how a family of gorillas and their dedicated keeper put the zoo on the map and helped it evolve into an international center for conservation. We'll talk to the author coming up, but first, here's the news rundown.
The Wharf made its big debut in grand fashion with a 4-day kickoff extravaganza. Fireworks, more than 30 bands, stilt walkers, and even Kevin Bacon, all part of the celebration as Mayor Muriel Bowser officially opened the Wharf.
When we look at this beautiful waterfront, we know that it's top quality. When we think about the tenants, both commercial and retailers who are coming here, we know that they will bring a diversity of options. When we think about all the wonderful residents who will be moving here, we know that they will bring life to this waterfront and this part of our waterfront, and we are so excited for that.
With the opening of this site, D.C. is becoming a true waterfront community.
The mile-long waterfront, with its mix of restaurants, office space, retail, and entertainment, is expected to produce nearly 6,000 permanent jobs and provide $94 million in direct annual tax revenue to the district.
And if you're planning to visit the Wharf, the city wants you to know there are lots of transportation options when it comes to getting to and from the Southwest waterfront.
The fact that you can get out here by bike, by walk, the investments we're making in transit, connecting to the metro, the Southwest shuttle, all of this is how we're going to connect this so that when you come down here, don't just drive, but look at the many options that you've got.
There's a large investment into these water taxis and a big commitment in the next several years to really launch and sustain a successful program.
To learn more about those transportation options, visit wharfdc.com. Mayor Bowser joined the groundbreaking on a new senior living facility in Northwest called Creekside. Creekside will add 105 new independent and 22 assisted living residences to the Ingleside Rock Creek campus on Broad Branch Road. The new development will include a center for healthy living, a day spa, and a bistro. Creekside is expected to open in 2020. Get ready, D.C. AlleyPalooza 6.0 is headed your way.
The citywide effort to repair or renovate alleys in all 8 wards was kicked off at one of the alleys that's under repair in Northwest. The goal of AlleyPalooza 6.0 is to repair or renovate 8 alleys in each of the 8 wards in 12 weeks for a total of 64 alleys around the city.
Keeping our infrastructure in a state of good repair enhances the safety and quality of life for all of our residents across all 8 wards of the city. And alleys are a critical part of that infrastructure. The district has more than 350 miles of alleys, and for many of us, alleys are often the first thing that we see when we walk out of our doors in the morning. So we are at DDOT are doing all that we can to make sure that that first step out the door is great.
During the kickoff event, Mayor Muriel Bowser also announced the appointment of Jeff Marudian as the new director for the D.C. Department of Transportation. For a complete list of all the AlleyPalooza locations in the district, visit ddot.dc.gov. It's all things D.C. at the first ever Made in D.C. store and cafe. The unique store features a rotating selection of products designed, crafted, built, and made in D.C. Everything from jewelry and paper goods to accessories and furniture, along with a wide range of local food and coffee from district entrepreneurs.
Being a small business owner is hard, but being a small business owner without a physical address is even harder, and I think the makers behind me can attest to that. This space offers a low entry to market opportunity for makers producing all over the city to grow and scale their businesses.
Uber drivers will soon have a state-of-the-art landing pad in Ward 7. The new Uber Green Light Hub will open spring in the East River Park Shopping Center. The hub will serve as a meeting point and support center for Uber drivers to gather and network.
A beloved former art teacher at Howard University is featured at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. Mildred Thompson is among 20 artists of color that are part of an exhibit called Magnetic Fields, Expanding American Abstraction.
The exhibition takes its name from one of Mildred's painting series, also called Magnetic Fields, the piece you see behind me. Mildred believed that the fields of magnetic energy were yellow and had a warm palette, and so you see that certainly in the painting behind me. She also had a vibrancy to her work that drew people to it. And we felt like that was an incredible metaphor for the exhibition, in that we are trying to uncover, rediscover, shed light on, draw people to the contributions of women in this exhibition who have, again, really contributed to the history of American abstraction.
For more information on the exhibit, visit the museum website at nmwa.org.
The Nell and John Wooden Leadership and Coaching Awards pay tribute to outstanding coaches who serve as mentors and impact the lives of athletes beyond the game. University of North Carolina men's basketball coach Roy Williams was honored with the 2017 Leadership and Coaching Award at a dinner ceremony at the Watergate Hotel.
Coach Wooden was one of my idols. He was a mentor to me. He did so many great things in the game of basketball, but he was a personal friend, and his entire family has been enormously helpful to me throughout my entire career. And other than Coach Smith and Big John Thompson and Bob Knight, those are the four guys that I stole everything from.
Along with Williams, Gonzaga College High School men's basketball coach Steve Turner, University of Virginia tennis coach Brian Boland, and Jonathan Scribner, head coach for women's basketball at St. John's College High School, were honored for their championships and sustained leadership. Former area player Walt Williams and Danny Ferry were also inducted into the Washington Metropolitan Basketball Hall of Fame.
The history of Tenleytown is depicted in a new mural. Mayor Bowser cut the ribbon at a dedication ceremony for the mural entitled Celebrating Tenleytown's History, Past and Present. DC-based artists Jarrett Ferrier and Stephen Voss collaborated on the project, which was funded through a grant from the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities.
I wanted to be here to help celebrate public art in our city. We just concluded what we call 202 Creates, and it's a month-long celebration of the arts in DC. And more than that is a specific focus on celebrating artists and how artists can make a living in the arts in Washington, DC.
The new mural is on the south wall of Hahn Cleaners, the oldest commercial building in the district.
All right, plenty going on today. A lot to talk about in the news recap. We'll start where we left off with the Tenleytown mural that was unveiled. The first thing I want to mention that caught me by surprise was that the Hahn Cleaners' oldest commercial building in D.C. That's surprising.
Yeah.
It's not surprising, but it is because
new.
there's so much history around D.C., right?
Yeah, I go past it all the time. It's in my neighborhood, so I'm looking forward to checking out that mural. And public art is always so fun to have in the
absolutely.
city.
And going right along with that, Made in D.C., the Made in D.C. store. I just think this is great because it's a collection of all the things that you could find in different spots in the district. Whether maybe it was an incubator kitchen or a small business that was just sort of creating things and marketing them to places around the district. Now there's one place you can go.
Very eclectic mix. Want to mention some really interesting food items.
I know people in DC love the Made in DC idea because you can support local business, you can support people who are contributing to the economy here, but I also think it's a good idea for visitors.
Oh, definitely.
Right? You've come from out of town, you want something unique.
Something actually that is from DC, and you can take it back and say this is a little bit of the district.
And let's finish with the John Wooden Award that we were talking about in the A block. So This is great. And John Wooden, you can tell from anybody you talk to or listen to in men's college basketball in general, has had an impact on so many people, so many coaches, players.
Yeah.
Really nice event to have here in the district, right?
Yeah, and so nice to also see Jonathan Scribner, the head coach of the women's basketball team, who we've already...
We know him.
We know that he's a great coach. We featured him
Yes.
on a previous show, and obviously, there's so many great coaches in this city, and when you see how much they give to their players,
Yes.
So nice to see them
Absolutely.
being honored. So, great event. Coming up next, the inspiring story of one man's dedication to bringing gorillas to the National Zoo.
And later in the show, it's been a dream for a long time, and now the Wharf is officially open for business. We'll take you there. Welcome back to We Are Washington. We're outside of the National Zoo today talking to author Kara Arundel about her book, Raising America's Zoo. Kara, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we're talking about the story of this book, which is the first generation of zoo gorillas came here to the National Zoo in D.C., and their caregivers, and the stories of triumph and heartbreak and everything that happened in between. It's a really, really interesting read. Tell me a little bit about the story behind the first generation of zoo gorillas here.
Yes, this is the true story of a family of gorillas at the National Zoo and the zoo's evolution from an antiquated animal park to an internationally renowned and respected conservation center.
Well, why was it important to bring gorillas here to the National Zoo in D.C.?
Well, when they came, it was very competitive among zoos. In fact, in the 50s, there were a lot of zoos that had gorillas, but the National Zoo didn't. And it was even after decades of trying to contact their sources in Africa and contract with hunters still. So when Nick Arundel brought these baby gorillas over, there was real big effort to make sure those gorillas were healthy and carried on the population.
How this impacted the zoo, how this sort of, I guess, changed the path of evolution for the National Zoo in your story. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. It's not just the gorillas, but all of the animals. But my book is focused on the gorillas. And you see through those times, through the 1950s and 60s, the medications were getting better. Better animal management practices. Instead of being caged alone in one barred cage, now they put families of gorillas together.
Tell me a little bit about why it was important to you to write the book and tell the story and to have that out there. Obviously, it's a big time investment to write a book and a lot of research went into it. So why was that important to you?
Right. I started really becoming interested in the story of these gorillas because my father-in-law brought these two baby gorillas, a boy and a girl, over from Africa in 1955 and donated them to the National Zoo. And through the years, the story was that he had captured these gorillas, but he didn't want to talk about it. And he passed away in 2011, and he had saved boxes of journals and photos and news clippings. And the story of the capture wasn't necessarily all included in those boxes, but it really led me to research more about these gorillas and their keepers. I went to the Smithsonian Archives right here in Washington, D.C. Because the zoo is part of the Smithsonian institution. They preserve all those records. And what I came out with was an amazing story of the zoo's history and the contributions of these gorillas, their offspring, and the people who cared for them in the essential time during the 60s, 70s, and 80s when zoos really transformed to become more conservation focused.
In general, of course, reading the book, there's a lot here, but the pictures are great too. And I think that it really helps in telling the story, and it really helps in sort of painting that picture.
Right. Some of the first few pictures are of Nick meeting the gorillas in Africa when they were about 16 and 20 months old, boy and a girl. And then their first few weeks here at the zoo, they were always put together because they were babies and they grew up together, or they were captured at different times. They weren't brother and sister, but they were always together. So at the National Zoo, they put them together.
I want to know if I was to go and pick this book up off the shelves, what would be the biggest surprise that I would get out of it in terms of what would be something I didn't expect to hear about or read about DC or the zoo or these gorillas that is, just really impressive that you've kind of told the story about?
Great. I think really two things would be very surprising. One, in the early history of the zoo, when the city and federal government worked together in a partnership 50-50 to support the zoo. During that time, to get more animals, a lot of DC area residents would donate animals from their backyard, snakes and turtles and bunnies. But then some other residents who went on more extended adventures would come back with more unusual animals to donate to the zoo. So the first population of the zoo animals were really donated from area residents.
Where can we find it? Where are you selling the book? Where could people go if they wanted to pick it up?
Yes, definitely on our website, raisingamericaszoo.com, and Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and also Politics and Prose.
Kara, thank you so much again for joining us. It's all the time that we have, but there's a lot to unpack here, a lot to this story, and I think that you should definitely give it a read if you're interested in the zoo gorillas or just the National Zoo here in DC itself, right? So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and don't go anywhere because coming up after the break, we're going to the DC Waterfront for the grand opening of the Wharf. Welcome back to We Are Washington, a big day in Washington, D.C., a day a lot of people have been waiting for, right? The Wharf here on the Southwest Waterfront, it's finally open.
And this is one of those projects that really transforms a city. I mean, looking around, you have to remind yourself of where you are.
I know a lot of people are definitely excited about the fact that that sign with the countdown on M Street finally hit 0, right? And you're able to kind of come down here and walk and take it all in, just like you said. You really have to think about where you are in the city. It looks so different.
I really think this is going to be amazing for the city. Obviously, so many people have come down. They want it to be the first to enjoy everything that the Wharf has to offer.
The whole social part of this, where we have water and food and music combined, it creates this incredible environment.
Been nice and busy, great crowd, great people. It's the Wharf, it's water. I think it's just a great location for Red Hook Lobster Pound.
Affordable housing, tax revenue, and jobs. It is rare that we get projects that have all three. This is one of those. This is one of those.
It's great after all these years to open it up and it actually goes live. And this is when it's real and people embrace it. And I couldn't be happier with the message that we're getting today with the public coming in and how they're enjoying all the shops and walking around. You can hear the chatter right now where we're standing. Hear music warming up, bands warming up, and it's all live, and that's fulfilling.
Very excited, to see the first show in the new venue. It's a nice attraction down here. I think it's going to be a great place to see a show. A nice smaller venue, something different than going, to the stadium or to the arena, to see it. So it's pretty exciting to have some big name, artists come down here.
He's having a great time, a lot of friendly people and a lot of new smells.
Do you think this is a place where you might be bringing Sprocket regularly?
Absolutely, and hopefully all the restaurants and outdoor patios will allow dogs on them, and it's a place we can hang out.
We could use more fun, and I think this is really the niche that we capture.
This is one of the best times in the history of our city. The Wharf is an exemplary project and an example of how government, the private sector can work together to enhance a neighborhood.
Now, all of that, but there's also so much more coming too, right?
Phase 2,
Phase
it
2,
will
I
be
know.
here soon.
More restaurants, and there's already so much down there. There's so much to see. Obviously, we just showed you a lot of it, but still a lot more to anticipate down at the waterfront.
By the time you get really familiar with Phase 1,
Yep.
Phase 2 will arrive, yes.
It'll be here. The other thing is the anthem. We got a chance to peek inside there, and it's going to be a really special place, I think, for a lot of performers to come through. We already have a lot of great places
Venues,
inside the
yeah.
district that have beautiful performance spaces, but this is going to be a new addition to that.
Yeah, that venue is particularly stunning. It actually looks like more like a museum.
Right, it really does. I like the symbols that hang from the ceiling when you first walk in. That was one of the nicest parts, I thought.
Yeah,
Really
very
interesting.
nice.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time that we have today, but we do have time for one last thing.
When we were talking about the Wharf and the big opening, I know for a lot of people, when you go down there, it's almost unrecognizable.
Right, that's what we said when we got on
Yeah,
the car,
it's
right?
almost like, it takes a minute to realize where you are in Southwest. But one landmark remains, and that is the municipal fish market, which I know many people are familiar with. Turns out it is the oldest open-air fish market in the country. So beating out New York's fish market by 17 years.
Wow.
So sorry, New York, you're number 2. DC, number 1, and that fish market is really an iconic,
It is iconic, yes.
place to visit.
That is all the time that we have today, but we'd like to thank you for watching us today and remind you that if you want to see any of our other shows or any of our other programming on DCN, to check us out on our YouTube page, search Entertain DC, and also listen to us on DC Radio 96.3 HD4.
See you next time.